Hi, this is John from MJG Education. Today we're going to look at the introduction for the IELTS Right To essay. We're going to talk about a neutral statement, a concession, and a thesis, and I'll show you how to add an opinion as well. So the first sentence you should write when you write an introduction, it's called a neutral statement. It's a neutral statement because you're not going to add any of your own opinion or anything to it. What you're trying to do every time is just rewrite what IELTS gives you, and that's all. You don't have to go into any dramatic beginning. A lot of people start with throughout the history of time, things like that. Don't do that. Just take what they give you as the throwaway sentence. There's often one. Here's a prompt, for example, a double question prompt. And it gives you this first sentence. Success is often measured in terms of how much money somebody has earned. Okay? And there's two questions added to this, but this is the throwaway sentence that they usually add to it. So what you're trying to do, basically what you're doing and what IELTS is doing at the same time is you're just trying to introduce the subject. That's all you're trying to do. So in this case, it's success, okay? And here we have a prompt that says success is often measured in terms of how much money somebody has earned. All you're trying to do is paraphrase or rewrite this sentence with synonymous language to make it sound different. Don't use the same subject-verb formation that they use. Change it up a little bit. That's all. If the subject is success, maybe you want to move it to the object position in the sentence, and then maybe move the object to the subject. That's all. You just want to rewrite it. So, for example, here, the neutral statement we came up with was, the traditional way to sum up a person's success in life is to assess their accumulated wealth. Now, note, the underlined part, often measured, another way of saying that, traditional way. And money, well, we're going to change that to accumulated wealth. And both are talking about success, but this is written in a completely different manner. And that's all you're trying to do. Just try and remember that. I guess, first of all, we should talk about what a concession is. Concession is just a term that comes from debating, usually. In the West, they'll always try and run it back to someone like Cicero in Rome 2,000 years ago, who used to, debate with the Senate all the time. So a concession simply means to concede ground. I mean, the verb form would be concede. Okay, so you're conceding ground in an argument. You might agree with a point or an opinion your opponent has given in a debate. Okay, so for example, if you state your position, your opponent, perhaps even your teacher, may say, good point. However, your opponent may then go on to take another position in the argument. So it's usually something like someone says something in class and the teacher will say, oh, that's a very good point. And then the teacher will turn around and go to the board and forget about whatever you said and just go on with what he was thinking. But it's a way to show that you have both sides in an argument, and that's what you're trying to do. Two sides of the argument you're trying to expose in a concession. Why? It's because the next sentence you have is going to be your thesis statement, and your thesis has to be validated. The best way to validate your thesis is to show that you have an argument, that there is two sides, or that there is a legitimate problem that you're trying to solve. Okay? So that's where a concession comes from. You're just conceding ground in an argument to further your point in the next sentence. So here we have our prompt again. And notice that there's two questions. It's a double question prompt. The first question is do you think wealth is a good measure of success? So that question there is a yes or no question. It's going to be answered in your first paragraph of your body. The second question you're going to answer in the second paragraph. It says, how else could we measure whether somebody is successful or not? So what you're trying to do here with your concession is tie these two together, okay? And what we do is we write it as a complex sentence where the dependent clause is first, and then the comma, and then the independent clause, okay? So what you have is the dependent clause is the concessionary statement. It's the throwaway statement that you're kind of mocking the other side. You're saying, yeah, I understand. Well, people believe this, but the independent clause is where you're going to defend in your essay. So it's simply a sentence that it's written with a dependent clause to a comma. That's the concessionary statement. And then the independent clause you have to be wary of because this is going to be your position in the essay. So this is our concessionary statement here. Of course, there's your prompt again with your two questions. Now, look at this first question. It says, do you think wealth is a good measure of success? That's written as a question form. You can take a little liberty with this and rewrite it as a statement, right? So as a dependent clause that starts with the adverb although. Here it is here. Although many people consider success to be the accumulation of a person's material wealth, comma, right? That's one side of your argument. Wealth is a good measure of success or a bad measure of success. That's up to you to decide. But as a throwaway concession, adverbial, the mock, where you go, although many people consider success to be the accumulation of a person's wealth, whatever. It's back to your independent clause. And you just say there are other ways to measure a person's success. And that's all there is to it. You don't have to give examples in here, right? This is your introductory paragraph. So you just want to move through your parts, right? You just want to say, here's my neutral statement, here's my concession, and then we'll get to the thesis in a moment. So here's a pretty good concession. Although many people consider success to be the accumulation of a person's material wealth, comma, there are other ways to measure a person's success. And so that independent clause that says there are other ways to measure a person's success, that just stands in there to show that there's other options, okay? And that's how that works. That's all you have to do is show two sides to your argument, and you're on your way. Now, with your thesis statement, you're always trying to tell your reader what you're going to do in both body paragraphs, okay? So there should be two parts to it, okay? So the thesis for this double question would look something like this. This essay will discuss two different measures of success, material wealth and social recognition. Now, one thing I want to point out is that second question is being answered, right? The second question that said, how else can we measure whether somebody is successful or not? That is being answered with just this term social recognition. Sometimes in double question, if you can give it a name, that second part, because what they usually do is that first question is a yes or no question, and you're going to answer that in your first paragraph. And it's a single idea paragraph, right? So the second paragraph is usually this question, what other ways can we? You're going to have to, if you can give it a name, like social recognition or volunteering or something, and because this is going to be a double idea paragraph, it's a lot easier to write as a thesis, right? To say, this essay will discuss two different measures of success, material wealth, and there it is, social recognition. The other thing I'll point out, we use the auxiliary will here. This essay will discuss. Remember, this future auxiliary will is being used because in the paragraphs or in the sentences that follow, you will discuss two different measures of success, material wealth, and social recognition. Again, all you're trying to do in this thesis statement is, be organized, but tell the reader what you're going to do in the two body paragraphs, okay? Now, we're going to move on to a noun clause, and I'm going to have a quick review in here, and then we'll come back to adding an opinion to your thesis. This presentation is on the noun clause in the object position. So there are a couple of things you have to understand about a noun clause, basically about verbs, okay? If I say to you, I run, you understand what I mean because this is a complete thought, a subject and a verb and a period. I run. It's also considered a sentence as it is a complete thought. However, this is an example of an intransitive verb. And the idea you're supposed to remember here is that it's a complete thought. I run. You don't have to add anything to this to make the person understand what you're saying. However, if you say I like, subject and verb, the same form, you will not know what I like because this is not a complete thought. Like is considered a transitive verb here. So something has to be added to it to complete the thought. And that's the problem with a transitive verb. You have to recognize it's a transitive verb, and then there's different ways you can complete that thought. So we have to add a direct object in most cases to complete the thought. So in this example, we say I like, and then you have to give it a direct object. Now, what you have to understand about English grammar is that you don't have to use one word as the direct object. As you can see, you can create what we call a noun clause in the object position. I think in this first example is the subject and the verb. You have a subordinate conjunction here, that, and then you just add a clause. So to create a noun clause, what follows the transitive verb is a subordinate conjunction, and then you add your clause to it. So, as I said, it's a transitive verb. In this case, the verb would be think. A subordinate conjunction, that, in this case, and a clause, which includes, a clause has to have a subject and a verb, and then whichever way you want to complete it or use a direct object. That's yours. In here, it's a direct object, subject, verb, and direct object. The earth is flat. Okay. That's the best color coordination I can do there for you. But simply, that's the noun clause and the object position, and we'll start to show you now different ways to use it. So, just as a review, after we've looked at the noun clause, here's the double question prompt we were dealing with. Success is often measured in terms of how much money somebody has earned. Do you think wealth is a good measure of success? How else could we measure whether somebody is successful or not? And this is what we've written so far in terms of an introduction. Neutral statement, concession, and then the thesis statement. The traditional way to sum up a person's success in life is to assess their accumulated wealth. Although many people consider success to be the accumulation of a person's material wealth, there are other ways to measure a person's success. This essay will discuss two different measures of success: material wealth and social recognition. Now, those three sentences alone are guaranteed to get your examiner's attention. Okay, so right here we're starting at a 7. People always ask that question, oh, how do I go from 6.5 to 7, or to 7.5, or to 8? Well, I'm going to show you now, and that's why I put in that noun clause part. This is the next step you can take. The trick you should know is you can always add an opinion to your thesis statement. Okay, so the transitive verb we always use is explain, right? So you can always say, for example, here we put it together. This essay will discuss two different measures of success: material wealth and social recognition, and explain why social recognition is the better choice. Now, with an IELTS exam, for all of the prompts except problem solution, you can use why as your subordinate conjunction in your noun clause. So it's always explain why, and then you keep a short clause, what your opinion is: social recognition is the better choice. That'll do it for you every time. With problem solution, it's a different sort of question. It usually asks you how to overcome a problem. So it's a problem and then how to overcome. It's not why you have a problem, it's how to overcome the problem. You change the subordinate conjunction for a problem solution prompt. When you get to the essay opinion, you'd use how, right? That's how that's done. Pardon the pun. But anyways, basically that's always it. You can just always add an opinion. Now remember, with IELTS, you always have to have an opinion for your advantage, disadvantage prompts, and discuss both views and give your opinion. So you have to know how to add a noun clause anyways, but to boost your score, put a noun clause in every one of your thesis statements, and that'll really help. To say that, it sounds easy just to say it, but sometimes while you're writing your essay, because again, we got this 40-minute time limit, sometimes you don't know what your opinion's going to be right off the bat, and you're halfway through your first paragraph and you go, oh, that's probably going to be my opinion. Just write that down. Because you know how to handle a noun clause now, you can just go back and write it in at any time, right? Just say, and explain why, and then give your opinion there. The trick with the opinion, once you add it there, please see my video on conclusions for the essay, because that's where you're going to use in your conclusion. 3 ways to write a conclusion. You can rewrite your thesis statement. You can summarize the body parts of your paragraph, which is what you usually do from problem solution, or you can have a future-leaning comment. For IELTS, most of the time, they want you to rewrite your thesis statement and then give kind of like a future-leaning comment, and that's your opinion you'd bring back in that second sentence in your conclusion. But I'll make a video about that anyways. I hope this was helpful. Let's take a look now at the final solution here we have for your introduction. So here you have your final introduction with a neutral statement, concession, thesis, and the opinion. Now this will really get your examiner's attention, of course, and this sets you up for an 8 or higher, right? This is just the best way to do it in a 40-minute time limit. This is a rather explicit form of an introduction because it says this essay will discuss, right? You're telling your reader what you're going to do. So here you are. The traditional way to sum up a person's success in life is to assess their accumulated wealth. Although many people consider success to be the accumulation of a person's material wealth, there are other ways to measure a person's success. This essay will discuss 2 different measures of success: material wealth and social recognition, and explain why social recognition is the better choice. Now, even though you're saying and explain why social recognition is the better choice, that will come up in your conclusion because your body paragraphs are going to deal with the first part, material wealth, is it good or bad? That's all you're answering. Is it yes or no question? So you're just going to say, yes, material wealth is great, or no, it's bad, right? That's all you're going to talk about, a single idea paragraph. In your second paragraph, you're going to talk about social recognition. You're not going to say and explain why social recognition is a better choice in your second paragraph. You leave that to the very last sentence of your essay. That's your conclusion, the second sentence in your conclusion. Okay? So I hope this was helpful. I know it's long-winded, but, if you can get it down to just 3 sentences for your introduction, and if you're using a noun clause, wow, you're off to a good start. We'll talk about body paragraphs later, and of course the conclusion as well. You can follow MJG Education on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Tumblr. We'll be updating that constantly, as with our homepage. We specialize in tutorials for the time being, as our website is being developed. So tutorials in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. We also do lots of mock tests that include feedback, oral feedback, if we do them through Zoom. And of course, you'll get feedback in a written form as well. We like to emphasize, too, that we're a Canadian company. You can save 35% if you're dealing with companies that charge you in US dollars. By all means, come back and check us out. We'll save you a fortune. Anyways, thank you very much, and have a nice day wherever you are.